growing rift between longtime allies, the US and EU, emerged at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend. What key issues are fracturing the alliance? And India's brand new semi-fast train broke down on its very first journey. Is India's new train project derailing? Why has modernizing India's railway hit so many obstructions? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. As the world order is broken, who is going to pick up the pieces? This was a key question hanging over the Munich Security Conference, or MSC, that wrapped up over the weekend. Known for its frankness and directness, the forum is positioned as a pure forum without any resolutions or declarations that need to be reached. Against this backdrop, discussions have been as exciting and fierce as ever. Confrontations between the US and its traditional ally Europe on many fronts were particularly noteworthy. Over what specific issues are the US and EU clashing? How big a rift is growing between the two sides, and why? Joining me from Washington, D.C. is Douglas Smith, former Assistant Secretary at the US Department of Homeland Security, and from Paris, Anne Giudicelli, former French diplomat and head of Terr, Risc, a global security consultancy firm. Welcome to The Point to both of you. Let me go to Ms. Giudicelli first. What is your impression of this year's Munich Security Forum? Are we seeing the rift widening between the US and EU, and over what key issues?
Well, it was very interesting to see that theater in a way that we knew already that the relationship between the US and the European countries were very bad, with a lot of tension, but we had a concentrated view with all the issues that create tension between the two parts. So okay, let's break it down. Let's break it down. Was kind of caught by surprise of the abrupt ending of your. I guess it's catching everybody by surprise, the kind of situation at this moment. Mr. Smith, what is your take watching from Washington? Does it come as a surprise to you, or do you think that this is not a surprise? Given the kind of rift that we have seen between the two sides, things are actually where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, no surprises there. I think it was a culmination of sort of 2 years of Trump administration flailing and trying to figure out a plan, and confusion on what their messages are. I think we saw sort of to a degree last year at the Munich conference. This year it just really sort of exploded on the stage. I mean, what we're seeing is an administration that knows a lot about campaigning but not a lot about governing. And I think you saw that in Vice President Pence's comments. I mean, the majority of his comments were focused on sort of his pledge of loyalty to President Trump, but not talking about the solutions that they need to focus on. I mean, what I kind of see it as is sort of a squabble amongst families. And I think what the Europeans are seeing is that, and the way you summed it up is absolutely right, that the U.S. is uninterested in leading right now. And they are having to make a choice of, do we wait out and hope that the Trump administration ends in 2 years and it gets back to more strategic dialogue, or do we need to go about in our own way? And while that all happens, clearly Russia, China, other players are seeing sort of these shifting sands, and can they interdict their own beliefs, their own sort of judgments to try to push it in a direction? Where I would end is what I thought was particularly interesting is initially when the U.S. broke out of the treaty with Iran on the nuclear deal, they were kind of neutral as to what the Europeans should do. What I thought was interesting is that they're now saying, ordering, not asking, but literally ordering the Europeans to honor the fact that the U.S. broke that deal as well, and forcing the Europeans to break it. So I think it opens up a whole lot more questions that the Europeans will sort of have to ponder, all against the backdrop, obviously, in the coming weeks of how does Brexit resolve with the UK and the European Union as well.
Let's take a look at different issues in a breakdown manner. First of all, trade. I mean, the EU's trade surplus with the United States reached a record level in 2018. According to EU figures, the total surplus for 2018 was 140 billion pound or 160 billion US dollars. Obviously, the United States does not like that. And this new trade data also comes at a time when US Commerce Department is reported to have considered European imported cars a threat to US national security. The first step towards possible auto tariffs by Washington, and according to German Chancellor Angela Merkel, what she said during the forum, she said that it's actually a bit of a shock to us that America would consider European imported cars a threat to U.S. national security. Basically, BMW's largest plant was actually in the U.S. state of South Carolina, from where many of the vehicles were exported to China. And it doesn't stop there. Basically, as the U.S. is likely to impose tariffs on European car imports, a European Commission spokesman said on Monday that the EU wanted to improve trade relations with the U.S. but would act swiftly if President Trump decided to hit EU car imports with tariffs. So it seems likely that a trade war is not totally impossible. So, Mr. Smith, why is the United States alienating its allies on the issue of national security, knowing that they're going to react in a very unhappy manner?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question. I mean, Donald Trump has made it very clear he loves trade wars, and he wants to see it. You know, I think what they're trying to do is, with lack of any coherent policy, they're trying to wave for a red flag and distract wherever they can. I mean, I think the Chancellor made an excellent point. I mean, the number of tens of thousands of U.S. Auto workers depend upon these companies based in the United States, and not just in South Carolina, but that is an excellent point. You know, with a lack of any coherent foreign policy, the Trump administration seems to be thinking that they'll hang their hat on creating trade disruptions, whether it be with the European Union, with China, lots of threats of escalations. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of clarity as to where they want to go with that. You know, they threaten about steel, they threaten about auto, a wide variety of topics. You know,
yeah.
The closest I can kind of figure out, and internal people in Washington, is just that with a lot of noise, people won't pay attention to the facts. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more with the Trump administration.
And the
a whole lot of noise, but not based on many facts.
But the whole agreement doesn't stop at trade issues. As I said, on the Iran issue, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said it is time for the EU to stand with their American partners. And then on the issue of the intermediate-range nuclear forces, the U.S. wants to come out of it, and the Europeans are saying, we are not part of it, but for us, we have benefited from it, and we want to keep it. We want the treaty to be in place. So, Ms. Giudicelli, explain to us what are the reasons behind this widening rift between the EU and the US at this moment? Is it mostly on the part of the United States, or is it somehow also on the part of the EU, gradually seeing that the post-Soviet order of one superpower dictating how everything has to be done needs to change eventually?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have many reasons for that. I mean, it's first of all, we have to say that the Trump administration has decided to withdraw from more and more treaties now. You have also on the climate and also on other issues. So, I mean, that's the first point. And for the European, you cannot break that like that years of negotiation and future of, I mean, the objective of those treaties. That's for the first point. Secondly, well, you know, there is the biggest issue for European now is the question of the use of extraterritoriality as a tool for, let's say, protecting American interest and not at all the, let's say, international stability and security.
Okay, it seems that we again are having some technical glitches there. Mr. Smith, what is your take of the factors that are contributing to the widening rift here? Is this something temporary we're going to see, or is this the beginning of a long-term trend that we're going to see, that Europe will want to stand on its own eventually in order to not to sacrifice too much for the so-called protection from the United States?
I think you raise a good point. I don't think it's so much that Europe wants to stand on their own. I mean, I think Europe has enjoyed a collaborative relationship with the United States, and I think that they are in a little bit of a wait and see in terms of, will this blip in the downgrading of the relationship as a result of the Trump administration's positions, disappear under a new administration, or do they need to sort of brace themselves for a longer trend? I think right now they're in a little bit of a wait and see mode. Mm-hmm. I think they're nervous. I think Chancellor Merkel's successor definitely has a much more hardline position on how she would like to deal with the Trump administration. So I think, but you also see the reaction to former Vice President Biden and his comments at the Munich summit. They were much more about sort of engagement. And I think that the balance will be not to sort of go back to sort of the good old days, because I don't think either side benefits nor wants that, but will they be able to survive sort of the disruption going on right now with the Trump administration, and then under new, better political leadership in the United States, be able to find sort of a new 21st century approach that makes sense for both sides?
Yeah, well, a very important question that the forum chairman asked Wolfgang Ischinger. He said during the conference, and I quote here, he said that the global security situation is the conference published its annual report, which is titled The Great Puzzle, Who Will Pick Up the Pieces? And I wonder, it's not just the question of who will pick up the pieces, but what will the new puzzle look like? Mr. Giudicelli, if you can try again, what do you think? Will there be a new puzzle? Will there be a new picture? Or will it be the same old picture?
Of course, we are now in a very critical situation, because you have many other options. I mean, the old war is already finished, and we are no more in bilateral situation of power in the world, and I mean, so many new power are emerging and threatening or challenging the old one. So the reaction you have two reactions: the isolation, or on the contrary, like what Europeans try to encourage is, of course, and defend, of course, is the multilateralism. That means cooperation, much more cooperation, and having a global view, and not only having, let's say, a national and protective view of its own interest, like the Trump administration is already trying to impose. So the idea is now we have to rebuild, in a way, a new kind of organization that can really face and have solution and bring new solution due to a war that is no more that it was before 40 years ago. So the thing is, when you say picking pieces, is just who will be the winner and who will be the loser. And the objective, of course, is to be able to have a balanced situation in the world, that you can not to leave some people and country beside globalization.
I see. All right, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Douglas Smith, former Assistant Secretary at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and Anne Giudicelli, former French diplomat and also head of Terr, Risc, a consultancy firm in global security. You have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break, and when I come back, India's brand new semi-fast train broke down on its first trip. What was the problem, and why is modernizing India's trains so fraught with difficulties? Stay with us.